What's up, MOPAR fans? As you can see, we're underneath frostbite and we're about to pull out this old limited slip. So the first thing we're going to do is unbolt this track bar and this rear sway bar and get it out of the way so we can get the back cover off and start tearing the inside out. So let's get this thing rolling. More bolt over here. Gonna have to grab us a wrench for this one because the exhaust pipe is right here in the way. So let's grab a wrench real quick. Alright, so we got us a big ratchet breaker bar and a wrench so we can get this one out over here behind the exhaust pipe. And I'm not going to take the bolt all the way loose. I'm just going to leave it loose enough so this track bar will just hang down right there and it's out of our way, so it really doesn't matter. So we'll let it just sit there and chill. So now we're going to get the rear sway bar off. We're going to take off these two bolts, and then we'll take off these ones here, and that'll remove that bar so we can get this the cover will come off without the bar off, but I don't think the limited slip's going to come out without this out of the way. So we'll get that out of the way real quick. Well, I think we're good right there, guys. We won't even have to take out these two bolts where the bushings is for the sway bar. As you can see, that sway bar, when it's unhooked, it actually, this piece right here that's bent over, when you fold it down, it actually clears the whole pan, the whole cover right here. So we'll have plenty of room to pull that limited slip out. So we'll just leave it like that. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to pull the top fill plug on the rear end, which is back here on the other side of the axle, up here on top of the pumpkin. We're going to pull that out so that it'll vent, and the oil will come out better when we pull out this bottom drain that's right here. These drain plugs is a 14 millimeter Allen head, and that's it. So I'm going to pull the top one out, and then we're going to get a pan over here and catch this fluid on the bottom when we pull out the bottom one. And everybody knows that rear end fluid stinks. It's never fun smelling that stuff. As you can see with our top fill bolt, we got a little bit of fluid coming out of it, so we're definitely got it filled up. So that's a good thing. Let's get the bottom one out. And at least Ram was, you know, Chrysler was nice to us and they gave us these plugs so we can drain out most of the fluid and not have to pry the cover off and just get splashed all over like we used to. So thank you, Chrysler, for that one. A big old bucket up here and see how far this is going to shoot. Oh yeah. Funny thing is, I changed this fluid when I first got this truck. I probably put about 40,000 miles on it, and this fluid looks pretty bad. And it's the full synthetic fluid. It's supposed to be the 75 by 140 full synthetic stuff. But yeah, it's pretty gnarly already. But like I said, we do a lot of highway driving and a lot of racing. So what do you expect? All right, let's start busting off these bolts. So all these bolts around the rear end cover is a 13mm socket. Wasn't too bad at all, guys. Hey, so far across our fingers, we haven't dropped one drop of oil on the floor. That's probably a miracle. Woo! That fluid definitely has seen its days, that's for sure. But all in all, the ring gear looks pretty good from what I can see. I don't see any chips on this side of it. The spider gears still look good. I don't really see any carnage on it, that's for sure. And we've been launching the hell out of this thing on some nitrous, as you guys know. So, no broken gears, nothing like that. So the next part is there's a bolt right here in the LSD that we're going to have to take out so we can pull this pin out, so we can pull our clips out and then take our tires off and pull out the axles. After that, we can take off these caps and then the limited slip should pull out. You do have to have the truck in neutral or the drive shaft obviously unhooked, one or the other, so that you can rotate this thing. So what we're going to do is roll the tires. And again, this ring gear looks perfectly fine. Absolutely nothing wrong with it, no chipping, no bad spots in it. So there you go. I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but right here there's actually a little notch in this bearing cap for the head of this bolt, so you can get a socket on it and pull this long bolt out, because it's a bolt with a pin about that long. So you pull that out and then it releases that shaft that holds the spider gears together and everything. You pull that out and then you can get to everything else. So we're going to bust out that bolt. That looks like probably an 8mm. Alright, so 8mm. Coming out pretty easy. They do Loctite that in there, but it's coming out pretty easy, so no issue with that. Alright, we got the pin out. Sometimes those are prone to breaking. I don't see any damage on this one, so it is going to be reusable. So, bam, bam, bam. So now I'm going to rotate the assembly back around a little bit where this pin is pointing down some. Go about right there. That way we can pull the pin out at an angle like this and we can still see our gears and everything and our clips that's inside there. Alright, so at this point I'm going to bust off the tires and wheels, and then we got to unbolt the axles on each side, and then we're going to pull this pin down, and then we'll be able to push our axle in a little bit and pull the clips and then pull out the axles. Alright guys, so what we got here now is we got to take the brake caliper off. I already did the driver's side, so I'm going to show you what you got to do on the passenger side, same thing. So we're going to take the caliper off. There's 2 bolts that holds the whole entire caliper on, so we're going to bust those off real quick. Before I get that last bolt off, I'm going to get my little strap, because what I've been doing is hanging, so we're not just hanging it by the brake line and damage that, we're going to hang it from a little strap from the frame and just kind of let it hang there. There we go, caliper off. Brake pads still look like new. And again, what I was saying was we're just going to hook, find a spot on here to hook the strap to it. And we'll run the other end up here. Again, that's all we're doing. Just letting it hang there, taking the weight off of the brake line, because this might be an hour or 2 to get this whole thing done, so definitely don't want to let it sit there and hang by the brake hose the whole time. Now we're going to take off this rear brake disc. Luckily they're pretty loose already, it looks like. The driver's side came off pretty easy too. Alright. So pretty much the trick here is the clips that's in the limited slip, when you push in the axle, the clip pretty much will just fall right out. That's what the driver's side did to me. So I'm going to move the camera and point it back to the center of the rear end. And when I push in this drive shaft, you should see, hopefully on the camera, the clip. And it'll basically just kind of fall out. So here we go. Just like that. Clip came right out. All you got to do is just push the shaft towards the center just a little bit, and it loosens up the tension on that clip. No tools required whatsoever. It just falls right out. It's super simple. So at this point, now our axles are ready to be slid out. But before we do that, the pin that was in the center right here, we're going to put that pin back in, and that little bolt just to hold it together. That way our spider gears don't go flying out on us. Even though we're not going to use this limited slip right now, but it'll keep everything together and just keep it nice and neat. So here we go. So here's our pin, and the reason you didn't get to see it be removed is because when I rotated my axle, actually no, excuse me, when I was taking off the brake caliper on the driver's side, it was enough vibration when we had the bolt out that the pin just slid right out, and it actually landed right in the drain bucket. So you didn't get to see that, but nothing to it. It's just a pin that goes in there, and you have a bolt that goes through the hole right here. That long pin. Super easy. So we're going to stick it back through there. I'm going to push the axle back out a little bit so we can fit it through here in the spider gear area. Just be kind of gentle so we don't knock that spider gear out. All right. we got it in there. There we go. I'm not going to tighten it all the way up. I'm just going to run it in there so it holds it. That's it. So now our axles are ready to come out, guys. So I'm going to back the camera up and you can watch me pull out the axles. All right. Should slide right out. Let's see what happens. Here. There we go. Just got to pick up on it kind of even to get it popped out of the rear end there. There we go. One shaft come on. Try to show you. So you can kind of see that groove right there on the end, and that's where those clips go that's on the inside of the rear end in the limited slip that we're taking out. That's what them clips are doing. That's what's holding that axle in. So we're going to do the same thing to the passenger side, guys. And it's kind of nice, may help you out. Grab a couple rags because the shaft is pretty nasty, and it gives you a little more grip when you're pulling it out too, that you're not just grabbing a hold of all that nasty oil. That's it. Just lay them down on the ground. And again, other things to inspect, and it probably wouldn't be a bad idea while you're doing this. I'm not going to do it because honestly I don't even think I have the parts. But you could, while you're doing this, there's a seal right here on both sides. You could go ahead and put a new seal in. And there's also a bearing right here behind the seal. You could put new bearings in. I haven't had any leaks. Normally if you have a leak, you'll get a drip around the tire area on the ground, or it'll leak inside the wheel. Again, it's not really a big deal to fix it, but you know, it probably wouldn't hurt if you're doing this to grab a couple seals and put some seals in. Also, the other thing you probably want to check is get a flashlight and look down inside the tube of the axle. And just kind of look in there and see if you see any carnage or chunks of metal or bearing pieces or anything like that, just to make sure you don't have any issues. Everything looks good on this side. There you go. Axles are out. So next step is going to be unbolting the caps on the main unit so we can pull out the chunk, and then we'll get started with that. So we're going to eat some dinner real quick, guys. So we're going to pause right here for a minute. So I did want to mention one thing. You know, we're eating dinner right now, and it just didn't feel right to not mention Joey the taco while I'm eating a taco. So this one's for you, man. Hot damn hell yeah. I really hope you see this video. Taco, dude. So before we pull out the old limited slip, I wanted to show you something right here. So this is the technical part. Some of you guys know I actually decided to stay with my factory 410 gears. So with that said, I'm getting a measurement of where they are right now, because we're going to reuse the factory gears, the pinion and the ring gears. So what we're going to do when we put the new limited slip in, we're going to set it at the same thing the factory has it set at. Normally when you put in gears, most of the time, I believe the backlash is supposed to be between like 6 and 10, somewhere in there, give or take. So in my case, right now the factory, we have our dial indicator gauge set up, and right here where my finger's at, this is where I got it right on the tooth of the gear on the ring, and we're at 0, and we're going to measure what the factory backlash is. So when I rotate this gear, you can see our needle right here. That is our backlash. And right now from the factory, we are sitting at exactly 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're sitting at about 9. So what we're going to shoot for when we put it back together is that same setting. And these little black marks here on the gauge, you can actually move them. So you can kind of tell we're kind of, it's hard to see in the video, but we're right there close to the end of the 1. Excuse me. So factory setting right now is sitting at about 9. So we're going to shoot for 8 to 9 when we put the new one in, when we adjust everything. So that is our set, that's our adjustment right now. So let's get this thing out. Alright, so we got our backlash tool, our dial indicator is off, and we are going to take off these adjustment tab bolts right here. There's 2, 1 on each side, and it's 11mm socket. And what these guys do is they keep tension on the adjustments here. These bearings, basically, that this one, the more you tighten it this way, it's going to push the carrier away from the pinion. The more you tighten this one up, it's going to push the ring gear closer to the pinion. So that's how you get your adjustment for your backlash, as far as moving this ring gear towards the driver's side or towards the passenger side. On these caps, there's 2 big bolts on each side that holds the caps in, which is basically what is holding this entire limited slip in. So a lot of people will mark these and then mark the case and try to keep them on the same side so you don't mix them up. That works. So everyone has their own way. Basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to take one off and I'm going to lay this one the same way it's sitting here. I'm going to lay it right here on my ramp for the car lift on this side, and this one here I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to lay it on the right side. That way I know exactly what side they went to. I'm not going to move them around or mix them up. So we're just going to lay them down, and we're going to get them off. So here we go. And I'm just going to leave them loose for right now. There we go. That's pretty much all it is. I'm going to keep it just like I got it and lay it down so I know exactly how it was, but they're basically, you know, just like a cap on a crankshaft or whatnot. That's all it is. It's just holding the bearing in place of the case right here. Let's get this one loose. And did I mention how much I hate the smell of this differential fluid? Kind of a good thing right now. I got a little bit of a sinus infection, so I can't smell that great right now. So luckily the smell is not that bad, but I can still smell it, so stay. All right. Now we may have to loosen up the adjustments to get this thing loose, to pull it out. We're going to kind of wiggle on it and see what happens. Yeah, it's in there pretty tight. So we got a hammer and a punch, and we're gonna try to back this side off a little bit. We may have to back this side off a little bit, but basically we're just trying to loosen up that bearing tension that is sandwiching in this chunk so we can pull it out. But if you can see, there's a hole here on the passenger side, and there's also a hole right here. A pretty good size hole, probably about, I don't know, 3/4, 5/8 hole or something. And these little bearing locks, they got little holes in them, and you can actually hit them with a hammer and a punch, one way or the other, to rotate them. That's how you adjust them. Seen that bearing move, so let's see before this thing falls out on us. Oh yeah, all right, so you see that little bit. I mean, I did not move that much at all, just probably a 1/4 rotation on each side, and this thing is falling out. So be careful, because if you move it a lot, this thing might just fall right out on your head if you're underneath the truck, or right on your foot, and this thing is heavy with that ring gear on there, so you don't want that to happen. So definitely back it off, tap them really slow. If you have 2 people, it might be a good idea to have someone hold this thing in while you're loosening them up, but just be careful. Finally! Being a pain in the ass, but there you go, one chunk. Let's go lay it on the table. Old limited slip right here. We're gonna flip it over. We're gonna unbolt the bolts that holds the ring gear on. You can see there's a bunch of bolts right here, and that's what's holding on that big gear. Grab our impact gun. Alright, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go get a chisel and a hammer, and we're going to work it. We're going to kind of gently work our way around this ring gear and pry it loose away from this old unit. Looks like it moved a little bit already. Oh yeah, we already got a gap there, so it's about to pop loose here in a minute. The idea here is just trying not to hurt our new ring gear, and just kind of work it around slowly but surely. All right, now we got a pretty good gap, so I'm going to get a bigger chisel. Come on, baby, you're almost there. Oh no, let's see if I can put it up there. You can see that big gap we got right there. She's about to drop. So, let's see if we can put it like this and get her to drop. Bam diggity! Now we can pretty much discard this. That's going to be our old unit, and if I can find some new clutches for these things, I'm going to actually try to rebuild this, and we will do a video on that. But for the time being, we're going to put a new one in. So put this one down. There's our ring gear. Like I said, teeth on that thing looks perfect. No chips, no bad spots, no nothing. It's a good ring gear. This is, like I said, I'm running, these are the 410 factory gears that the RT comes with. All right, we're about to press these bearings on. We're going to do the first bearing. So when you're pressing on these bearings, you want to make sure that you're pressing on the inside of this bearing material, not on the outside of this bearing race. That will damage it. You want to press right here on the inside, get a socket or something that fits just in there on top of that hard metal right here, and that's where you want to press. We'll go get a light so I can see if we're all the way down. One bearing on. All the way seated. Now I'm going to flip it over and do the other side. There we go. On her home, baby. Alright, she's down. Bearings pressed on. Yes, sir. Alright, we got the ring gear cleaned up. We got our bearings pressed on. We're going to mount this ring gear back on the new limited slip. Hold it up there and get some bolts started. All right, we're going to get our impact gun. And you just kind of want to go around a little bit at a time. just try to go down evenly as possible. All right. Whoa, this is too much like work. All right, so we're gonna check our torque on these real quick, which is about 6 or 7 rat tats. Alright guys, as you can see, we already got the new one in, and sorry I didn't show that, but camera battery died, so I'm gonna have to get another battery or 2 so we have a backup. But I got the camera charged up enough to hopefully get us finished up. So I got the new one in. I've already set the backlash. We got it right at where it was originally before we took everything apart. I'm right at about 8.5 to 9, which is where the old one was, and you can kind of hear. Even feeling it, you can tell it's exactly the same. So pretty much where we're at right now, we're going to pull the pin out of the new limited slip right here, the little pin bolt, and then pull that big pin out. And then we're going to slide our axles in, put our little C-clips in, and then put the pin and the bolt back in, and then basically put our brake calipers on and fill this thing up. We're pretty much done. So here we go. And of course, now the light wants to die on me. Can't win for losing tonight. But everything's been going pretty good, besides camera batteries dying and flashlights dying, and pretty much everything's dying. New bolt out, new pin. I'm gonna roll this dude. We'll just go this way, it's a little easier. Put our hand in there and kind of keep it together. Yep, it's going to make us go get a light, that's for sure. Alright, we got our pin where we can get it out. Pin's out. Now I'm going to shove these axles in and get these clips in. One clip, then drop it in. And then we're going to take our hand, we're going to push our axle back out a little bit. And that holds our clip in. The clip kind of sits in that groove, and then that spider gear that's on the side has a recessed lip, which keeps that that clip from popping out. So it's impossible for it to come out once it's all sitting in the exact spot. Now let's do it again on this side. All right, that one's in. We're gonna grab the clip. One clip. Axle's pressed in. We're gonna drop the clip in here. All right, and push the axle back. And we're good. Now we're gonna slide our big pin back up in the center of the LSD. Slide our pin back up there, nice and gently. All right, now we're going to rotate our drive shaft to get our bolt hole lined up with this groove in this bearing cap, so we can put our pin bolt back in. It looks about right. Might have to, there we go. Get our gear wrench. Well, 8mm. We're going to tighten that to approximately 1 motherfucker and then 2 motherfuckers. All right, did you get that? You torque that to about 2 motherfuckers with an 8mm wrench. All right, guys, we're ready to put some silicone on this dude. Put the cover back on. Put some fluid in it. Put our brake calipers back on, and we're about done, guys. So, like I said, I'm sorry the battery died, and I couldn't show you guys exactly dropping this thing back in and then setting the dial indicator back up and getting it the backlash set back again. But basically, the same thing as when we took it apart, and I showed you what the backlash was before we took out the old one. But at the end of the day, guys, this is really not a hard job. Honestly, it's pretty easy. I started at about, I don't know, 5:30-ish, and we're about 10 o'clock right now. And again, it probably wouldn't take that long, but I'm trying to film it. And when you're filming it with a camera, it's probably twice as long, honestly, because you're constantly moving the camera back and forth and trying to adjust everything. So definitely a little harder when you're trying to film it. But if you're starting this, you know, without trying to worry about filming the job or anything, you could probably do this in a few hours, give or take. And like I said, it's not that hard. It's, you know, pretty much more or less basic tools you can definitely rent at AutoZone or something if you don't have something. And you can definitely do this at the house on some jack stands or whatnot. Like I said, this video should help you out. There's plenty of other videos out there that can get you, you know, started or showing you what to do also. But definitely nothing to really be scared of, guys. Setting the backlash on these things is super simple once you understand the dial indicator. And it's, again, I don't know what else to say besides it's really not that big of a deal. It's pretty easy. I think that's going to do it for today's video, guys. So as always, hit that subscribe button, tap the bell button for the notifications, and we'll see you guys on the next one.